Hi everybody and welcome to the second Ancestry video. For those of you who don't remember, I was doing a series about these Ancestry DNA kits that have become all the rage recently, and also have developed some controversy because, as you know, to a lot of cultures and to a lot of people, ancestry, culture, history in that sense is very important to them. In fact, it's been the basis of a lot of civilizations. So I also got interested in this, as I am also interested in history in general, and I decided, after some controversies that I mentioned before, where I think it was 23andMe, which is the subject of this video, and I think it was also Ancestry.com, may have been outed as doctoring DNA results to deter people from being racists. Yes, they thought that these white people, it was all white people who were the victims of this, could be potential Nazis. So in order to make them not racist, because, as if being mixed race hasn't stopped somebody from being a Nazi or some kind of racial supremacist for the other side. I mean, black nationalists have a hell of a lot of mixed race people in their ranks, yet nobody seems to bat an eyelid if they're black nationalists, even if they're not actually black. But hey, whatever. They thought this would stop people being racist, and you'd be happy to know that the CEO for 23andMe is also Susan Wojcicki's sister. Yeah. Yeah, so we can see where the social justice comes from. But regardless, this is what influenced me to fork out a lot of money in order to try these things, these new fangled DNA kits. So I started off bright and early. I got my Ancestry.com kit, or .co.uk for me, and I got it out. I got my video out, it did well. However, this one has taken far too long, mainly because of events that have happened in my life and outside my life. So talk about politics and things like that, and just not having the time. The results have been here for months now. However, what's also interesting is that recently I got an email from them, and it said apparently that they've updated their system and the way that they do the DNA kits. Apparently it's more accurate now, and they've added new regions and things like that, so that it can be ever more accurate. And from what I've seen, the layout of the website is also different. So I'm glad in a way that I've waited, because I might have even more information to share, although I'm not sure. But it is interesting that immediately when I looked at the website, there was a slight change. So let's view this, shall we? The difference between Ancestry and 23andMe is the detail. I find that Ancestry.co.uk was more interested in the regions you were from, didn't really give me an awful lot of data and information, whereas 23andMe has simply overloaded me with information, which is a good thing. I like being overloaded with historical information, because I'm actually pretty good at dealing with that. Now it says here, which is interesting because they've kind of revised things, I'm 60.5% British and Irish. Yeah, for some reason they put Brits as one thing and Irish as well as one group, when we're kind of not. Especially English people genetically are actually dissimilar to each other. The further west you go, the more Celtic, the further east, the more Viking, and I assume the further north you go and south you go, there would also be differences. I don't know. Even in the class structure, I mean, it's the same in Scotland as well, because they had similar, in fact, yeah, they had the exact same ethnicity of overlords at one point as we did. In the upper classes, I mean, this is also filtered down to the lower classes because people's lives change, but in the upper classes especially, there's more Norman blood, more French blood than there is in the lower classes, although again, that's only on average. And then you've got the Irish and the Welsh. Some Scots people are more related to where they actually come from, Ulster, others are more Pictish, whereas the Irish and the Welsh are more Celtic. Again, some of the Welsh are more Roman, potentially. So I don't really get why they've grouped us all together, but we've been on an island and have been united and divided over hundreds of thousands of years. So I guess we are actually probably closer than maybe we realise. I am, as I originally said, 83.9% European. Most of that is of British and Irish descent. And as you probably know, I've mentioned this before, in terms of my British and Irish ancestry, I have no Welsh ancestry, but I have everything else. It then says I'm 4.9 French and German. Now, we had a big debate in one of the streams if the Franks were Germanic, which they were, and if the French and Germans are the same people. I would say they're similar, but not the same. I don't know if I'm French or German. I assume it's going to be German, simply because of the migration patterns in history. But again, Trinidad used to belong to the French before it became English, I'm pretty sure. So maybe I've got French blood from there. Who knows? Then it says I'm 0.8% Scandinavian. Now in the old one, it actually told me exactly where in Scandinavia I'm actually related to. and it said Norway, if I remember correctly. Not Sweden and not Denmark. I don't know which one's more red-pilled, Denmark or Norway, but there you go, guys. Then it says 12.4% broadly Northwest European. And as it says there, this is something that they just can't really assign to one group of people, so it's most likely a mishmash. I mean, I am a mishmash. Who would have thought that even the rest of my ancestry is a mishmash? 1.7% broadly Southern European, which is very interesting, because the last time I saw this, it actually said it was Spanish or Portuguese, or was it both? I don't know. It definitely narrowed it down to Hispania. I know that, but it doesn't really matter. I do know that I will have some of that ancestry, because again, the Caribbean, that area, Spanish people were there. And now we get to another interesting part. I am 15.3% Sub-Saharan African, and to further highlight that point, coastal West African 6%, which actually reflects what ancestry.co.uk said. So again, I am most likely a descendant of slaves, pretty much. But then again, I could easily be a descendant of the slave masters, because we're forgetting who actually sold the slaves to the Europeans. Could well have been that some black people migrated to America just to get involved in that slave trade. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And we do know that there were former slaves who later became plantation owners. As I said before, when ancestry.co.uk mentioned Nigeria, I'm apparently 3.8% Nigerian, which is very interesting. But of course, it doesn't really mention which tribe I'm related to. And then it breaks even further down, and it says Senegambian and Guinean. So I guess that's close to Senegal? I do know where Gambia and Guinea-Bissau are. Again, it just highlights the slavery aspect of it. And then it mentions hunter-gatherer societies. And again, for the ones that it's difficult to highlight individual ethnicities, I am 1.8% broadly West African, so the other West African tribes and nations that I might or might not be related to. And then it also mentions 0.5% broadly Congolese and Southern East African, which is very interesting. I don't know if this is just people willingly migrating or forcefully being migrated. Again, due to the nature of slavery in the 1800s and the 1700s and before that, it's very probable that I'm related to groups of slaves that interbred with other nationalities and tribes of Africans before ultimately either being integrating with the whites at a later date. Maybe it could be the 20th century when immigration happened, or even back then. There could have been mulattoes in my family, as they would have called them, well back. I don't know. Then it says North African and Arabian, and 0.7% unassigned, which is interesting because that's changed as well, which further highlights, is this the most accurate report they've got for me? Because the last time I saw this, and I should have took pictures of it, it mentioned Native American descent, a tiny amount, which would make sense because they were native, well, we'll call them Native Americans, Amerindians, whatever, in the Caribbean. They were called the Caribs, that's where Caribbean gets its name from. That again would make sense, but apparently none. This is actually an incredibly detailed test. It gives you literally everything. So this is going to be quite a long video, guys. I apologise. They really show you like haplogroups and ancestors that you have in common with other people. There's some really funny ones that might be memed. You'll like that. This is my ancestry timeline, and it's very interesting, which implies a lot of stuff. So from the years between 1720 and 1810, I had a 5th great-grandparent or a 4th great-grandparent who was North African or Arabian, and also somebody who was an African hunter-gatherer. I assume from what it said, the Central African region. That could mean either a man or a woman met each other and had a baby, and that became one of my other grandparents. But African hunter-gatherer, that could mean anything. I mean, are the Berbers hunter-gatherers? I mean, they're nomads. But then again, I suppose they're not really hunter-gatherers, are they? Because they settle. They're semi-nomadic in many ways. But again, that could mean anything. But as far as they know, these are the people that they can trace back to. So that's nearly 400 years, if not 400 years, of my family being around. That's quite a long time. And then it moves up to Scandinavian. So after that, as far as we know, my next great-grandparent, 3rd great-grandparent, 5th great-grandparent, 6th great-grandparent, who was 100% Scandinavian, was born between 1750 and 1840. And then my other African grandparents were born after this Scandinavian person, around about the same time as my French/German grandparent, between 1780 and 1870. And then after that, between 1840 and 1900, was the coastal West African. Now that's most likely my Trinidadian descent. I have no idea. And then British and Irish. So that's essentially my mum, her mum. So essentially that's my current grandparents who are still alive and the great grandparents I had before. But again, it's kind of ignoring my other granddad, my dad's dad, who we don't know, who was not white. So again, I have grandparents, I have great grandparents that were born after the 1700s, after the 1800s, who are not accounted for. This could mean several things, that my dad's family, or at least his dad's family, was already mixed race by the time they arrived in the UK, and that it's my mum's side, and his mum's side as well, because my dad's also mixed race, who were entirely of British, Irish stock, or plus Scandinavians, maybe French and German, who knows. And that basically is what I am today, which is very interesting. But I'm only hypothesizing here, I don't have a clue. And again, it's only a bit of fun. Now onto the haplogroups, and apparently my maternal haplogroup is H3A, and my haplogroup, the woman who I am related to, nearly 240 generations ago apparently, lived 6,000 years ago. Where? I don't know, but I assume in Europe, because that's where the one immediately before her migrated to. And apparently H3A is relatively common among 23andMe customers, 1 in 620 people, and also this haplogroup has a lot of people, famous people, including Marie Antoinette and Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh himself, has also recorded genealogy of haplogroup H, and also Copernicus. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily related to these people. I just share, I think, a common ancestor. I mean, technically speaking, I guess I am related, but I wouldn't put much stock into that, guys, okay? I am not royalty. And now onto my paternal group, which is RS675. Now, this haplogroup went all over the place, and again, it's relatively common. Now, what is interesting, and the Irish people who follow me will like this, potentially, I share a paternal line ancestor with Niall of the Nine Hostages. For those of you who don't know who Niall of the Nine Hostages was, it's like he was, or they were, part of a big Irish dynasty way back a long time ago in Ireland's history. They're almost mythical, but they do actually exist, and I am apparently related to these people through my dad's side. I'm related to Irish royalty, semi-mythical. I've got people from all over the shop that I'm related to. I share a haplogroup with the very Prince Philip himself, and well, there you go. I can't say for sure, due to the change that I've seen, that 23andMe is actually very accurate. Now, for the most part, it has remained the same. Like, the African part is the same, and also the European part is the same, but the slight details have changed. Maybe that is because they said they've made it more accurate, but I don't know. I would suggest that you maybe stick with ancestry.co.uk, maybe. 23andMe is good if you want to know, like, maybe potential diseases, which I didn't do, because they can also find in your genome, things like that, what you may or may not have a potential illness for, or potential, like potential heart problems, things like that. I would also, again, along with ancestry.co.uk, treat these things with skepticism, because you never know if they've either organically messed something up or intentionally messed something up for political reasons, although apparently they won't be doing that again. Now, this is it. This is the end of this particular video. The next one in the Ancestry series is the National Geographic Ancestry Kit, which is apparently a lot more scientific. In fact, I think that is part of a major scientific endeavour anyway, but that's far more expensive, and at the moment, I can't afford it. So again, it's going to be a long wait till the next one. But as you guys know, I did say expect long waits, although it's no excuse for me when the results are there and I've not made a video. But hey, you know what? I made you a video. Hope you liked it. Hope you're interested in the history of this, because again, these videos had to help me to get used to making historical videos. I don't know what else I'll make after this series is up, but it will be a series that I can actually finish in a short span of time. So anyway, until next time, I'll see you later.